Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmlitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Ye Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhur Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girum Yatkripatam Vande Shri Gurum Dhirataranam. So today's verse is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 12, Text 10. Kalpayitvatmana yavad abhasam idamishvaraha dvaitam tavanna viramet tato hi yasya viparyaha. Kalpayitva, ascertaining positively. Atmana, by self-realization. Yavat, as long as. Abhasam, reflection of the original body and senses. Idam, this body and sense. Ishvaraha, completely independent of illusion. Dvaitam, duality. Tavat, for that long. Na, does not. Viramet, see. Tataha, by such duality. He, indeed, asya, of the person. Viparyaha, counteraction. Translation: as long as a living entity is not completely self realized, as long as he is not independent of the misconception of identifying with his body, which is nothing but a reflection of the original body and senses, he cannot be relieved of the conception of duality, which is epitomized by the duality between man and woman. Thus, there is every chance that he will fall down because his intelligence is bewildered. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here is another important warning that a man must save himself from attraction to woman. Until one is self realized, fully independent of the illusory conception of the material body, the duality of man and woman must undoubtedly continue. But when one is actually self realized, this distinction ceases. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmani Gavi Astini Sunichaiva Swapave Kecha Pandita Samadarshanaha. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. Within brackets, outcast. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 18. On the spiritual platform, the learned person not only gives up the duality of man and woman, but also gives up the duality of man and animal. This is the test of self realization. One must realize perfectly that the living being is spirit soul, but is tasting various types of material bodies. One may theoretically understand this, but when one has practical realization, then he actually becomes a pandita, one who knows. Until that time, The duality continues, and the conception of man and woman also continues. In this stage, one should be extremely careful about mixing with women. No one should think himself perfect and forget the Shastric instruction that one should be very careful about associating even with his daughter, mother, or sister, not to speak of other women. Srila Madhvacharya cites the following shlokas in this regard. बहुत्वेनैव वस्तूनां यथार्थज्ञानमुच्यते अद्वैतज्ञानम् इत्येतद् द्वैतज्ञानं तद् अन्यथा यथा ज्ञानं तथा वस्तु यथा वस्तुस्तथा मतिः नैव ज्ञानार्थयोर्भेदस्तत एकत्ववेदनम्. Unity in variety is real knowledge, and therefore giving up variety artificially does not reflect perfect knowledge of monism. According to the Achintya Beda Abeda philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there are varieties, but all of them constitute one unit. Such knowledge is knowledge of perfect oneness. Okay, so what is going on here? How did we land up here? First of all, Canto 7 is basically describing Prahlad Maharaj, a very exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord. So, chapters and chapters and chapters are devoted to Prahlad Maharaj, his glories, his teachings, and so on. So, to give the context, they also have to talk about his father, Hiranyakashipu, who was a very powerful asura, was captured and tormenting the entire material universe almost. So all that has been described. Narada Muni is describing that to Yudhishthira Maharaj. So all that narration is done, almost the entirety of Canto 7 is done. And then Yudhishthira Maharaj asks Narada Muni, can you please explain about Varnashrama? So chapter 11 is about the four Varnas: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. So he goes in detail and explains all that. And then chapter 12 is about the four ashramas: Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. So the four ashrams are being described in detail in chapter 12. And especially Narada Muni is explaining about Brahmacharya. And these are the verses that are dealing with Brahmachari. And then he will talk about Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha is retirement from householder life. How one should be, what one should be doing as a brahmachari, and people who are retired from householder life. So why is Yudhishthira Maharaj asking this question about Varnashram to Narada Muni? What is the significance? Krishna also touches about Varnashram in Bhagavad Gita. Chaturvarnam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. So he says these four divisions of Varna and four divisions of ashram has been brought in by me, not by birth. It is by one's guna and karma, what the qualities a person has and the activities that person performs. Based on that, it needs to be identified. That is the actual system introduced by the Supreme Lord Krishna. And he mentions that in Bhagavad Gita itself, Chaturvarnam Maya Srishtam. I created it, but not by birth, not on the basis of birth, but on the basis of guna and karma. So why is it needed? Because we are all spiritual living entities. Krishna says that in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita itself. When he starts speaking spiritual knowledge, he says, we are not this body, we are not the mind, we are not the senses, we are not the intelligence, but we are something else altogether. What is that? Atman. He says, Atma. So, what is the characteristic of Atma? We are spiritual, we are eternal living beings. We have to be associated with eternality. That is our nature. But this material world that we are living in is not eternal. It exists for a time and then it is destroyed after the time is done. And while we are existing within this material world, we are given a material body. So the Atma exists within that material body, moves around, performs activities, all that thing goes on. And this material body, there are 8,400,000 different kinds of material bodies. Imagine that 8,400,000 different kinds of material forms of life. So a living being, Atma, can be placed into these wide variety of material bodies. And it exists within that material body, moves around, performs activities, and there is an event called death that happens, and that material body is gone. The Atma quits that body and takes on another material body, and this keeps on going eternally in this material world until this material world is destroyed. So, eternality can be found in the spiritual energy and the spiritual world, not in this material world. Everything here is temporary. Ashashvatam is the word Krishna uses in Bhagavad Gita to describe this material universe. Ashashvatam, everything is temporary, nothing is permanent. Happiness comes, doesn't last, goes away. Suffering comes, goes away. Everything comes and goes. And if we even look at the past history of 2000, 3000 years, there were so many dynasties once upon a time. They are not existing anymore. And something else replaces that, and they exist for a time and they are also gone. Like everything that we see around us has a short duration. The duration might vary, but it is within that duration. Before that, it doesn't exist. After that, it doesn't exist. That is the nature of this material world. So, every living being comes into this material world. We are all in different levels of consciousness. So, we all have to be gradually elevated. So, towards that purpose, Varnashrama is given to gradually elevate the consciousness of the living being, so that we are, currently we have so many material desires, so many material attachments. These are all called impurities. And because of these impurities, the consciousness of the living being is not pure. The consciousness has to be purified. And that is the intention of Varnashrama Dharma. To gradually, according to the regulations given in Vedic scriptures, a person situated in one particular varna and one particular ashrama, they can gradually keep growing and growing and growing and growing and finally reach the stage. What is that stage called? Nishkama. Becoming, coming to a stage where there is no material desires. Oh, I want this. I want that. I want to enjoy this. I want to enjoy that. My happiness, my happiness, my happiness. That is material conception of life. So Varnashrama Dharma is to gradually help each living being to move away from that material conception of life and reach the stage of Nishkama without any material desires. And when we reach that stage, we naturally want to learn more. So then we approach Vedic scriptures, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and try to learn even more about who we are, what this world is about. Is there a supreme personality? Who is that supreme personality? All that information we get. So that is the purpose of Varnashrama. That's why Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking Narada Muni, please explain about Varnashrama. And Narada Muni is going into detail because it is needed not only for the kings but also for the citizens in the kingdom. So everybody benefits by that. So that is why Narada Muni is talking about all these things. So we'll come to this verse now. In this verse, it said, Kalpayitvatmana yavat abhasam idam ishvaraha. Abhas. Abhas means reflection. There is an original item, and when we are keeping that item, say, take an example, apple. We take an apple and we bring it in front of a mirror, and that apple is exactly reflected in the mirror. No difference at all. Whatever the apple, how it looks, exactly it is reflected in the mirror. So that reflection is called abhas. Okay, but there is a difference though. One is the original and one is the reflection. What is the original? The original apple is the original thing, and what is reflected in the mirror is the non-original thing. So there is a difference. Similarly, the spiritual world is the original, and this material world is a reflection. And is not only a reflection, it is an upside down reflection. In chapter 13, I believe, of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives that example. Oh, this material creation is just like a upside down banyan tree. Ashwataha is the word that he used. It's upside down banyan tree. Why a banyan tree? Because banyan tree lives for a long period of time. The more years it passes, the bigger and huge the tree becomes. And not only that, normally a tree will have roots, a stem, and many branches, and that's it. But banyan tree, what happens? From the branches also there will be offshoots that comes, and then it enters the ground and it forms roots there, and like that there are innumerable offshoots coming from a banyan tree, and all of them come into the ground and take root. So you, at one point of time, when the tree is like 100 years old, 200 years old, it's huge, and you will not know which one is the original trunk even, because all of these have become big and wide and large, and you do not know where the tree begins, where the tree ends. That is the banyan tree. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this material world is like the upside down reflection of the original tree, that is the spiritual world. So the material world is a upside down reflection of the spiritual world. That is why here in this verse Narada Muni is saying abhasam, and here is referring to the original body and senses that are present in the spiritual world. All of us are Atma, spiritual living beings, We have our spiritual bodies in the spiritual world. We have spiritual senses, spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence, and so on. But all of them in the material world is just a reflection of the original body and the original senses. That's why Narada Muni is saying Abhasam. It's a reflection of the original body and the senses that we have in the spiritual world. Okay, what is the difference between the spiritual body and senses we have in the spiritual world and the material body and senses we have in the material world? Duality. Because everything about material world is about duality. Duality means two opposites exist at the same time, good and bad, heat and cold, respect and disrespect, honor and dishonor. Like that, everything is duality in this material world. So that is why he is saying, as long as a living entity is not completely self realized. What is complete self realization means? He again says that in that same verse. As long as he is not independent of the misconception of identifying with his body, which is nothing but a reflection of the original body and senses. So we have to understand we are not this body. And we also have to understand what this body is. This body is made up of material energy. This is a material body. This is not my permanent thing. My permanent thing is spiritual body and spiritual senses. But the living being, we have lived in this material world for millions and millions of births. In different material bodies, we have lived and existed in this material world. We have practically identified ourselves as this material body. So that is why the Supreme Lord Krishna, out of his compassion and causeless mercy, comes to speak Bhagavad Gita and starts with that ABCD of spiritual knowledge. So we are not this body. Don't be incorrectly identified with this material body. Oh, I am this material body. If we are identified with that, then our thoughts, our actions, everything is based on that wrong identification. That's why Prabhupada used to give an example. We are trying to solve a mathematics problem. There is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and so on, and finally we reach the solution. I do the step 1 wrongly, and I do step 2 correctly, step 3 correctly, and so on. Everything is correct. Will I get the correct answer? No, because step 1 is incorrect. So step 1 should be correct, and then the subsequent steps should be done correctly to arrive at the correct answer. So here, what is our step 1? Identification. What is our identity? Oh, I am this material body. Step 1 itself is incorrect. And when we have step 1 incorrect, then all the other things that follow, all our thoughts and all our actions, everything will be, even though perfectly performed, it is going to lead to the incorrect solution. So that's why step 1 should be proper identity. Oh, I am not this material body. I am a spirit soul. That is what Narada Muni is also talking about here. Complete self realization is defining it as being independent of the misconception of identifying with this body. So we should understand no, this is not my true identity. My true identity is in the spiritual world. This is only my temporary identity. So, what can I do to the best of my ability with this temporary identity to get away from this temporary identity? That is actual and complete self realization as being defined by Narada Muni in this verse. So he's saying, as long as a living being is not independent of the misconception of identifying with his or her body, it is not complete self realization. And then he adds, this body is nothing but a reflection of the original body and senses in the spiritual world. Each one of us have a spiritual body and spiritual senses, spiritual mind, spiritual intelligence, everything waiting for us in the spiritual world. But we have a temporary, non permanent material body in the material world. That is not our real identity. That is not our permanent identity. And then he talks about conception of duality because he's talking about brahmachari, right? So brahmacharis should not be associating with women. They should minimize as much as possible the association with women, and it goes the same for brahmacharini as well. Who are women who are celibate, they should avoid association with men as much as possible. Because if you take the four ashramas, brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas, three ashrams, the association between men and women is almost absent. There is only one ashram, grahastha ashram, where associating between men and women is allowed, householder life. So all the other three ashrams, it's very minimal or non-existent. That is the nature of the ashrams. So here Narada Muni is talking about brahmacharis specifically, but the principle is equally applicable to everybody. So he's saying, which is epitomized by the duality between man and woman, because a man's body is different, a woman's body is different. Woman can conceive and get pregnant and deliver a child. A man's body cannot do that. We know there are like that. There are so many other differences between a man's body and a woman's body. And as long as a spirit soul is living within a man's body, it, it has to conduct according to that body. And as long as a spirit soul is living within a woman's body, it has to conduct itself according to that woman's body. But there are so many other things that are spiritual in nature that can be carried out. Bhakti. Whether we are in a man's body or a woman's body, each one of us can practice bhakti, and we can and we should develop attachment for the Supreme Lord. That is the purpose of Varnashrama Dharma. To let go of the attachment to the temporary material stuff and to develop attachment to the permanent spiritual Lord. So that is the purpose. And we have to keep that in mind when all these uh, uh, explanations are given about brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. The ultimate aim is we should develop attachment for the Supreme Lord Krishna. That is the purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is helping us to come to that stage. It defines Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, and then say, oh, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the source of everything. And we should develop attachment for him. We should develop love and devotion for him. So, towards that purpose, Yudhishthira Maharaj has asked the question of Narada Muni. And now Narada Muni is explaining all these things. And he's saying, Abhasam, this body and senses that we are talking about, we know about, we experience, is only a reflection of the spiritual body and senses that we have in the spirit. So everything that is present in the spiritual world is present as an upside down reflection. That is the material world is nothing but the upside down reflection, as Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. So where do we see such an upside down tree? Krishna also says, right, there is a reservoir of water. On the banks of that water there is a huge tree, and if you see the water, you will see the tree reflected upside down. So like that, this original spiritual world is reflected upside down, and that reflection is the material world. This is not real. This is temporary, and the original one is the spiritual world. So we should all cultivate knowledge about that spiritual world. So that's why Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives explanation about the nature of the spiritual world also. He says every one of us can go there, and he is encouraging us to come to him, to his spiritual abode. He says that abode of mine which is never destroyed, please come there. He is giving us invitation. So we should develop attachment to the Supreme Lord. We should develop attachment to go and be with the Supreme Lord in his spiritual abode, and let go of this non-permanent temporary material world. That is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita, and that is explained in detail in Srimad Bhagavatam, because Prabhupada says repeatedly, Srimad Bhagavatam is like a graduate study, whereas Bhagavad Gita is like an undergraduate study. So that is what is happening here in this verse. Basically, to let go of this duality and move towards the true spiritual identity. And that's why Prabhupada is quoting Bhagavad Gita chapter 5 verse 18, Pandita Samadarshanaha. So when we come to that spiritual platform, we start seeing every living being. There are so many different, but a living being is existing in the body of a worm. A living being, a spirit soul is existing in the body of a snake, in the body of a bird, in the body of an animal, in the body of a plant, in the body of a tree. So the bodies might be different, but the entity that is living within that body is spiritual in nature. So spiritually, we are all the same. We are all spiritual entities. So that equal vision is had by such a Pandita Samadarshanaha. So we should, so as long as we are in this material body, material world, there will be the differences in terms of the material bodies. We all understand. Just because we know that a spirit soul is living within the body of a lion or a tiger, we do not go and embrace it. That lion or tiger will say, "Oh, now I have my breakfast snack and we are done." We don't. We understand the differences. Oh, there is a difference in terms of the material body, but inside that material body is living an entity that is spiritual in nature. That is, all of us are Atmans, spiritual entities. And in the same body, in each and every body, there is also Paramatma, super soul, who is also spiritual in nature. But quantitatively, the spirit souls are never equal to or greater than the Paramatma, super soul. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Lord. He is infinite, whereas we are very tiny. That is the difference. So that is what Prabhupada is saying in the final line. He is quoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva. Beda means difference. Abeda means non-difference. So there is difference, there is non-difference simultaneously. How can that be? Either it is different or it is not different. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says there is difference, but there is also non-difference simultaneously, and it is achintya, inconceivable. How? The same example that I gave about the difference between a soul and a super soul. A soul is spiritual in nature, super soul is also spiritual in nature. So there is that non-difference or similarity, oneness. But at the same time, there is difference also. What? Quantity. We are very tiny. The super soul, the supreme Lord is infinite. So there is the difference, Beda. And there is also Abeda, non-difference, simultaneously, and it is inconceivable. How the inconceivable becomes conceivable when we receive mercy from the Supreme Lord and His empowered devotees. Through that process, we have to get the knowledge, and what is inconceivable becomes conceivable and understandable. So that is the process. So that is what is going on in this chapter, in this canto, in this chapter, and this verse. Basically, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 12, verse 10. So I will stop here and we'll see if there is any discussion or questions or comments or sharings.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, this is Vinod Maheshwari. I also visit to Patamak temple and I see over there. But I did not know that you know a lot of things. And you explained this Varna ashram very well. I asked many people, I was not clear before what is the difference in Varna ashram and sannyasam. And today you explained me very well, and I'm thankful for that. And thank you for taking your time, to short notice and explain coming to this class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. I see some familiar names. I see Vamsivilas Prabhu also on the call.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'm so happy to see you here after a long time. Uh, and thank you so much for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. My question is, Prabhuji, like you mentioned about going back home and being with Krishna in Goloka. Is that the highest aspiration, or should we always just aspire to serve our spiritual master and the Lord wherever, just like Prahlad Maharaj was trying, saying that he doesn't want anything but to serve.
Good question. Because normally we are given two different objectives, right? Like wherever we are, we can serve, or we have to go back to the spiritual world. But the answer to both those questions is, what does Krishna want? If Krishna wants me to spend time in this material world and practice bhakti and keep preaching about him to others, okay, I am fine doing that. If Krishna wants me back in the spiritual world, then he can take me back. So that should be the mood we should aspire for. Whatever Krishna wants, I am ready to do that. Oh, Krishna is wanting me to go to some other place and live there and preach there. Okay, let me go. Prabhupada embodied that mode. He was a sannyasi and he was living in the holiest of the abodes, Vrindavan. But he said, oh, my guru wants me and Krishna wants to go to the west and preach. Okay, I will come out of Vrindavan and I will preach. Yeah, as Krishna wants. So my personal likes and dislikes have to be put aside. what Krishna likes and dislikes, what Krishna wants, that that takes precedence. So sometimes Krishna might indicate, okay, you still are not perfected in bhakti, or stay in this material world and cultivate bhakti, become purer and purer, and help others also get connected to me. Okay, Krishna, I will do it. And Krishna will say, okay, you are ready now. I am ready to take you back to the spiritual world. Then, okay, Krishna, whatever you want. Because we also have to keep in mind, Krishna misses each one of us, our association, and he wants us to be back with him in the spiritual world. So that is also there. So that's why it gets very simple when we say, okay, it is about Krishna's likes and dislikes, what Krishna wants. Hope that answers your question, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
And Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Guru Maharaj ki Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you. Yesterday I could not make it to the temple, but wish you happy Nityananda Trayodashi again.
Same to you, Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you for Prabhuji for your such a wonderful class. The last statement what you said, to Vamsi Vilas Prabhu, right, that Krishna also wants to see you, that makes a very deep sense. If you can please elaborate a little bit on that again.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
We are all eternally related to Krishna, or Krishna's various other innumerable forms. He has a form of Rama, Narasimha, and he has like unlimited. So each one of us are eternally related to him. And we are basically in a disconnected state currently. So that's why Prabhupada always gives a, part and parcel is the phrase that Srila Prabhupada uses to describe the relationship between God and the spirit souls. We are part and parcels. What does it mean? So, example is, we have a body. There are different parts in the body, like the head, and head also has different parts: eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tongue, and so on. And then we have hands have fingers, we have legs, and we have toes. So we are, all these are body parts. So we have this finger. If this finger is cut, it's disconnected from the body now. As long as it's connected to the body, it feels so vibrant, alive, pink and rosy and whatnot. But the moment it's disconnected from the body, it it is shriveled, it looks pale, it doesn't look vibrant and alive. So again, it has to be stitched back to the body, and the blood has to flow, and the nutrition has to flow, and then finally it heals and it starts becoming vibrant and alive. So similarly, each one of us spirit souls have to be connected to the Supreme Lord. And what is that connection? It is our love and devotion. Through the love and devotion, we are connected to the Supreme Lord, and then we are getting that bliss and all the nourishment and nutrition in that loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, and we are vibrant and alive. But when we are disconnected from Him, we are not. So the Supreme Lord is always aware of that fact, but we are forgotten. We have forgotten it, and we are happily roaming around in this material world in our disconnected state. But the Supreme Lord is hankering. When will this soul turn back to me and get connected back to me? Each and every soul, there are billions and billions of souls in the entire creation, in the material side of the creation who are ignorant of this and roaming around claiming this, oh, there is no God. Even if there is a conception of God, it is impersonal conception of God. Like we see so many different kinds of conceptions, and but we are still stuck. All of us are stuck in the material world, and each one of these souls also have a unique direct relationship with the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord is saying, oh, I want that relationship with that soul. Soul A, soul B, soul C, like that. There are each and every one of us. Krishna is hankering to have that loving relationship and exchange of love with each one of us. So he's wanting that, but we are ignorant of that. That is our material conditioning. So Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, all these are given to awaken that love within us, and then want we also start developing that hunger. I also want to have that loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, and then we make progress, and finally when that perfection state is attained, then we are always in that loving relationship with the Supreme Lord. That is what the Supreme Lord wants, because he says, oh, these are all my parts and parcels, they have all to be connected with me. But he also respects our tiny free will, whether to be connected or disconnected from him. But being disconnected from him, he feels the pain, but we are numb to that pain. We are in a coma stage.
That's right, Prabhuji. Very, very nicely explained. Every time I things on this, most of the time it makes, to um make ourselves, our soul to uh, connect with Krishna. I remember the verse, from Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajata pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam mama ena upayanteti. Hopefully I said correctly, but that shloka, yeah, like Krishna himself is, as you said in your class, Krishna himself uh, will give the intelligence, but only we have to endeavor from ourselves, our side. That's right. And as you said, yeah,
Krishna is giving, he is present as Paramatma in each one of our bodies, and he is giving that signal, and he is giving that knowledge, but we are not tuned to that channel. Previously, when we had all these radio and televisions where we used to tune, each channel has to be tuned correctly to receive the signal properly. The signal is being transmitted, but it has to be tuned correctly and pointed correctly so that it receives the full thing. So the super soul is transmitting signals, is giving the knowledge, but the soul is busy, distracted somewhere else, looking somewhere else. So the signal is not being received properly. So when we are properly aligned towards the channel and receive the signal, then dadami buddhiyogam tam happens every single moment. So super soul is ready to give us guidance and knowledge. Only thing is we are not tuned in.
yes, that's correct, Prabhuji. Yeah, there are so many verses. Yes, that's right. Like Krishna has said, I am everywhere. Only we have to have that eyesight to, or maybe that eagerness or that thinking to
Yeah.
see me. But I am already there, everywhere, wherever you want. Like Prahlad Maharaj also showed in the pillar, So thank you, Prabhuji. It boosted us a lot today. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. This is Geeta for a very illuminating class. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
So your question, my question was, Prabhuji, that like you said, this material world is inverted to the spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say inverted, that I remember that term. chapter in Bhagavad Gita where the banyan tree is inverted. But in the real way, how is it? I am not able to correlate the inversion.
Okay, the inversion is um, in the spiritual world, or the spiritual conception is Krishna is at the center. It's everything is for Krishna, Krishna's pleasure, Krishna's happiness. That is the mood. That is the spiritual conception. That is the spiritual world. But when it gets inverted, it gets upside down, opposite the material world. The conception is I am in the center. It's about me. Me, mine, my happiness, my pleasure, my happiness, my pleasure. So that is the inversion. So instead of Krishna being in the center, we become the center. So
Right.
everything in this creation is for me. Everything in this creation is about me. Everything in this creation is for my pleasure and happiness. That is the material conception.
Yeah.
Whereas the spiritual conception is Krishna is the center and everything is for his pleasure and happiness. That is the spiritual conception. So that spiritual conception becomes inverted to the opposite, and that becomes the material conception where we become the center.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And so, like you said, that we need to understand what Krishna wants. So, the more the soul is pure, then the more we will be able to understand what Krishna
Mhm.
wants, Lord Krishna wants, right?
Yeah.
Because right now we don't even, at my level it is, we don't even know what he wants. We keep guessing, you know.
Yeah. So we go to at that situation, we go to the person who is purer than us, and they will tell us what Krishna wants. That's Prabhupada. Prabhupada knew he is 100% pure. He did not have any personal thing. Oh, I want to become famous. I want to acquire this much wealth. I want to do this. It was nothing about that. His was, I want to serve Krishna. I want to please Krishna and my Guru. That was his, and that's how he lived his. So his purity level is at the very highest. So he comes and tells, this is what Krishna likes, this is what Krishna doesn't like. So then we say, yes, Prabhupada, and our job is done. We do not know, but he knows because he is at that purer stage.
Right. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. And the another thing, Prabhuji, is that it's really very, for today's Kali Yuga times, is, to hear this say that the father should also keep away from his own daughter. I mean, it's a very, very statement, like you say, men and women should not mingle. So, a father and daughter relationship is like, it's, can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, sure. And especially you said Kali Yuga, but Kali Yuga is the one where we see why such an thing has to at such, at least caution and care should be there, because so many sexual abuse is happening, and some of those sexual abuses are being done by the father to their daughter. We are living in such a world today, which is shocking, but which is happening right around us currently in the world that we are living in. So that is why, see, intermingling caution is suggested because ultimately there is this body called a male body and a female body. And even though that happens to be the daughter, we are seeing such kinds of abusive in that father-daughter relationship itself. So, as a father, how can I be careful so that I don't put my daughter or daughters in such abusive situations? So that requires thoughtfulness and caution as well. So that is why the caution comes in, to just to be sure, to be careful. Oh, this might happen. So an example that Prabhupada normally gives. Oh, today there is going to be heavy rain. So when there is heavy rain, we know when I am going to step out of the home, I either have a raincoat or carry an umbrella so that I am protected from that rain. So similarly, when things like these are mentioned, it doesn't mean that it eventually happens, but it might happen. And what can we do to safeguard and not only safeguard and protect ourselves, protect the other person in that relationship as well?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. So this is mainly for Kali Yuga, because if we see Treta Yuga and Dwapar Yuga, like there was no such even thought, I think.
Not necessarily. It might happen. The material energy is made up of three modes: Sattva guna, Raja guna, and Tamo guna. So all these three gunas are always impacting us and influencing us to think and act. So one example I will give: Lord Brahma.
Yes.
Lord Brahma is bringing forth so many living beings into the material creation, and one time he created a very beautiful girl. So since that girl came through him, he is the father of that girl. But he was so infatuated by the beauty of that girl, he was basically like trying to force himself upon her, and she was trying to run away from him. And Lord Shiva saw that, and he became very angry. How dare you do this kind of a thing?
Right, right.
So, a father and daughter relationship there.
Yes. Very true.
And we are talking about somebody like in a very elevated state like Lord Brahma.
Um, yes, Prabhuji. Even Lord Indra did that, na, to one of the that Ahilya. What is it?
Yeah, but at least Ahalya was not
His
a father-daughter relationship. It was somebody else's wife.
right,
So he was basically like lusting after somebody, his wife.
right. Yes,
The wife of another person should be looked at as a mother, is teachings of the scriptures for our own protection, and we extend proper respect to that woman rather than thinking, oh, how can I enjoy that woman, even if that woman happens to be another person's wife or my own daughter. So that so these things can potentially happen, and how to protect ourselves not to get into that kind of a compromising situation is what the scriptures are cautioning us about.
thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, actually, the inversion you're talking about is also about that, right? In the spiritual world, the attraction is for Krishna, and in the material world, it's between the two genders.
Two genders and anything except Krishna. That is the material conception. So many distractions. Bahushaka Anantasya, Krishna says in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. The intelligence is multi-branched with all these distractions.
Hare Krishna
Thank you.
Prabhuji, thank you so much sis, for this nectarine class and your time. And we are so grateful that just a second you didn't think of that also. Okay, tomorrow is work day, but in just 1 second of time you agreed to give the class. So that was so inspirational, and we are so grateful. And I like the analogy how you explain about the radio tuning the station, and then like that Krishna is waiting for us, but we don't. We have to take endeavor, and we have to understand that with our intelligence to tune up with Krishna. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
So anybody has any question or comments?
It so happened that I was free today morning, and that is Krishna's arrangement. So
Yeah.
you asked me, and I could say yes to you. Otherwise, I would have been forced to say no to you because I would have been on another class.
You are our lifesaver, Prabhuji, today.
The Krishna came to protect you.
Yes.
I told Shamarasika, you know now, you can approach Prabhuji, you know.
Yes, please give your association more, Prabhuji. Like I will contact you for more classes. Yeah.
More classes. Only thing is like I am about to start morning sessions with the George Mason University students every day, weekday in the
Oh,
morning. So
acha.
around this time, exactly those classes is going to conflict.
Hmm. Okay, okay. So yeah, but we will coordinate at that. Whenever
Yeah,
you
sure.
don't have time, you can join us. So yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank
Vancha.
you for taking the time to do this every day. Thank you for all the devotees for coming together and chanting and reading and hearing and discussing. So please continue to do that. Thank you so much.
Yes, Prabhuji. Because of
Thank
all
you.
devotees joining, only we can do this service. Yeah.
Yeah.
All glories to the all attendees. Hare Krishna. So let's pray blessings to all the Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpatarveshya
Vanchakalpatarveshya
patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo namo namaha.
Namo Namah.
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय
Jai.
जय दास ठाकुर की जय
Jai.
प्रभुपाद की
Jai.
जय भागवतम की जय
Jai.
ग्रेस रघुनंदन प्रभु की जय
Jai.
थैंक यू
Gaura
सो
Bhakta
मच
Vrinda
प्रभु
ki
जी
jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
Yes, I got message that this class is very emanative, Prabhuji. So nice feedbacks I'm getting.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji. Thank
Hare
you for
Krishna.
making more practical oriented. Hare Krishna.